and he's on the sideline screaming, "You're gonna have to break it. You're gonna have to break it, Omar. Let's put tension in the foot and break it." And I'm just like, oh my God.
What's the most efficient path to victory against this particular opponent?
He's dropping off for the choke here. We could see the finish. It's looking tight. Tight at Alpra.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Everyday Jiu-Jitsu Podcast. I'm your host, Mat Physiotherapy, the Everyday Jiu-Jitsu Podcast, everything you need to know about Jiu-Jitsu. Today, I have with me Diana Wang. Welcome to the show, Diana.
Hey, Matt. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. I'm good. Thank you. Guys, if you want to support the show, check out the links in the bottom. Diana, who are you?
I am a doctor of physical therapy by trade, certified athletic trainer. So I've used to work some of the IBJJF, like on the side as an athletic trainer for like first responders. I am also a jiu-jitsu blue belt and I live in LA. So
nice. And who do you train under? Where do you train?
I train with Isaac Dodelin, and right now we are a bit in between gyms, but his new academy should be open in a couple months. He's posted about it on his page as well, so I'm not spilling any secret information, I hope.
Cool. Yeah, Isaac's obviously world-class, world champion under Cobrinha, very, very good at jiu-jitsu. That's awesome. So blue belt, have you competed before?
You know, I competed once when I was a white belt, like 4 or 5 months into training. And then COVID kind of happened, and then I haven't competed since then.
Mm-hmm.
I thought about competing last year, but kind of went against it. I don't know. Maybe I'm just like not in the right mental space to do that. Plus, trying other different hobbies as well, like running. So,
that's interesting. I've actually never spoken to anyone who was like a medical staff at an IBJJF tournament. How was that from your point of view?
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. I went to school for athletic training, and we mostly work with sports like baseball, like the traditional sports, baseball, basketball. I worked a bit with the junior college football team. So there's different stressors that come with different types of sports that you're working. Now, jiu-jitsu is a whole different beast, as in there's, depending on the type of event that you're working. So I worked Master Worlds in Vegas for a couple years in a row, and it was, we basically watched it grow to like the monster that it is now, with like 40 something mats at a time over the span of like 5 days. But the reason why it's so chaotic is it's a bunch of mats going on. A lot of times we're stationed to watch a group of mats, but if something were to happen, usually the ref just like waves you down, and then we kind of run over there as like a first responder to almost like rule out if there's any injury that is so severe that the athlete cannot participate anymore. So that's basically our role, is to go up there, make sure that the athlete is safe. If they're not safe to compete, then we will tell the ref, and the ref will stop the fight. And then we also deal with blood, and that's kind of like on the mats. And then after that, they usually come to our medical station if athletes need to get taped up, if they need band-aids or anything like that. We're the first responders to be able to give them those things. But it's a quite stressful environment because there's a lot of eyes that need to be everywhere. Sometimes when it rains, it pours. So it's like one small thing happens and all of a sudden something else happens and something else happens, and we're like spread super thin, but sometimes there's nothing going on. So it's it's super fun though. So I loved it.
Are you going to keep doing that?
Right now, because of my schedule and with everything, it's hard to organize, but all the IBJJF tournaments, especially because there's so many now, there's a lot of other staff members that are able to cover those. So whenever I can, I will try to get in there. But right now with my schedule, it's kind of hard to make it happen.
What's the most common injury that you see at jiu-jitsu tournaments?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I think from my time, I've seen a lot of shoulders. So a couple dislocations where we had to put the shoulder back in. Some knees. I feel like nowadays with heel hooks being a little bit more prevalent because of the like them making it legal in like the higher levels of IBJJF.
Right.
The last time I worked Master Worlds, there's also Jiu Jitsu Con, so there was like some crazy stuff that happened over there with the Nogi side.
Yeah.
But I think mostly shoulders and knees will probably be like the two top body parts that gets injured in like a competition setting.
hmm Would you say that like the divisions that heel hooks are allowed in IBJJF, like the basically adult brown and black,
Hmm.
would you say that there's like more knee injuries in those divisions because of the rule change?
I think I think of course you're going to have an increase of risk because it is allowed and people are going to be attacking those types of body parts a little bit more. That was something that as a physical therapist in the physical therapy world of jiu-jitsu, there has been discussion of when IBJJF did allow it to be legal, like we're like, oh, okay, we're going to start to see more influx in knee injuries because of not just because of the competition setting, but also in practice. People are going to be training a lot more of that to prep for nogi as the nogi scene continues to grow. But the brown and black belts are going to be training that a lot more. So there's higher chance of some injuries being like happening. That would
Yeah.
be a really interesting thing to look into in terms of like statistics. But I can
Yeah.
imagine that it would definitely increase because of that rule.
Mhm. On the flip side, I would think that if more people are playing with heel hooks and becoming more familiar, then maybe they would be more knowledgeable in the situation and actually not experience injuries. But I guess that kind of depends on their ability to deal with leg locks, right? Did you see? I can't remember which promotion it was. I thought it was PGF, but it was like 2 or 3 days ago from the time of this recording, and somebody was caught in a Kimura. I think it was like a triangle Kimura dilemma, and
Mm,
I don't even know who the fighters were, but the arm was like it was getting completely twisted to its like end state, and this is also like high level athletes, like it's not children, I don't think. And the referee decided to stop it before the break. The guy was like he was showing no signs of tapping, but the arm was in
mm,
a position that it was like, okay, it's gonna break now, and he was basically not gonna tap. I guess he was choosing to let it break, and the referee stepped in and stopped it, and then he started complaining and everything, and I commented like that was a good stoppage, because it was just like there was nowhere for the arm to go, and there was so much more range of motion due to the nature of the position. So I'm not sure if you saw that. How do you feel about referees like intervening when there seems to be an impending injury? Because I know a lot of high level jiu-jitsu fighters don't want the referee to intervene, but in situations like that, I feel like it's pretty justified, honestly.
yeah, that's a interesting point that you brought up, and it kind of goes back to what we were just talking about with knee injuries and with the leg entanglements and leg locks and stuff. I think at certain levels or certain points of competition, some people are going to just accept the fact that there's higher risk when it comes to, being in the semifinals or the finals of a tournament. So
Yeah.
chances of them tapping is going to be lower because they want to try to get out of it to get their like that extra chance to be able to make it to the next round. In terms of being like a physical therapist, there's always long-term consequences when you don't tap when it's time to tap. So there's like that borderline of safety where if the ref's like very experienced, they understand jiu-jitsu, they understand joint positions, and they know, hey, this guy's gonna have to deal with months and months and months and months of rehab if he doesn't tap right now, then I totally understand. Like if he's
Or
like,
his
oh
life could
yo, like
change.
like yeah, or his life could change, like something really big could happen. It's like, hey, I don't think this is a smart move. Um, I don't know. Then there's the other side where the athlete's like, I'm willing to deal with the consequences. But in terms of safety and from like a medical professional standpoint, I definitely think the ref is responsible at a certain degree to be like, hey, 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 like this is not the best idea. So
Yeah. I like I've seen matches where the guy is in a fully locked inside heel hook and the other guy is trying with all of his power to break it. There was a match a couple of years ago when ADCC started doing the opens. I flew to Ottawa to do this ADCC Open Canada in Ottawa. And in the finals was one of my buddies, Neto Australia, I believe his last name is, and he trains here in Vancouver. And he was fighting a guy named Omer Goem, I believe, who is like a high level guy back east. Omer gets him in an inside heel hook, and he's like switching to reverse butterfly grips. He's hipping in as hard as he can, and Neto is not really doing like smart defense. He's just eating it. And
Mm,
Kieran Kachuk is one of Omer's training partners, and he's on the sideline screaming, "You're gonna have to break it. You're gonna
oh
have to
my
break
God.
it, Omer. Let's put tension in the foot and break it." And I'm just like, oh my God. It was like, and this heel hook went on and on for seemingly forever, but it was about 30 seconds at least, if not like longer,
Hmm.
because the bite was on and there was nowhere to spin. And like, I don't know how people uh do that. Like for me, if I'm in a submission, I don't care if it's a heel hook or a Kimura. I'm generally, I almost look at it like chess. Like if I don't tap when it's fully on, it's almost like it's rude. It's like rude of me as a sportsman to not concede defeat. It's like my cat, I swear to God, I shouldn't obligate. There it is. I shouldn't obligate my opponent to break me. Like if I'm caught,
Hmm.
then I should concede. And it would be like on the chessboard where somebody is like, basically you can't beat them, like you don't have enough players or whatever, and you're making them chase you around the board basically when it's inevitably going to be a loss, right? And so I look at it as kind of rude. But in that situation, you know, the ref could have easily been like, okay, I've seen enough. Like, this is a fully locked heel hook. But at the same time, Neto ended up escaping the heel hook. He ended up
Hmm.
losing the match, even though it was actually kind of a narrow loss. But it was like, man, that's a situation where the leg could have been absolutely destroyed. And it wasn't really, because I guess he's okay now. But someone looking on, I'm sure there's lasting damage, right? But as someone looking
Hmm.
on, it's like, okay, I guess we let that continue because this is the finals of the advanced division in ADCC. Like, it would be kind of rude to stop. But in
Hmm.
the situation that I talked about previously with the Kimura, it's like that guy was in like a Kimura triangle type dilemma, and there was nowhere for him to go. Like, do we really want to see someone get their shoulder ripped out, or are we going to let that continue? So I think it is kind of like, there's definitely a gray area. And I think when we talk about the highest level of grappling, it's a tough call for sure as a referee. But like I said, I didn't hate the call. I thought it was
Hmm.
a good call to stop the Kimura.
Yeah, yeah. I totally agree. I think it's all nuance based like anything else. But at some point it's like the responsibility of the athlete to be like, I'm really willing to deal with the consequences. It is what it is. And that's sometimes like when we work jiu-jitsu tournaments and stuff, we have to give them the choice too. Sometimes we're like, hey, look, like this is what happened on the mat. You're in the semifinals, you have 30 seconds left. Um, do you want to compete still? If it's something where they have a fracture, an obvious dislocation, something that we deem as too severe, then we'll pull them off. But sometimes if it's like, oh, you may have hurt your shoulder a bit, but there's 20 seconds left. Do you want to compete? And then a lot of times they say yes, because they want to at least finish out the
Right.
match. And we stand on the side, watch them finish it out, take them to the side, and then we really assess their shoulder. So it's a very case by case. But your two examples like are is a good example of one where it's almost impossible to get out. The other one is there's still options.
So, have you ever worked alongside of like kids matches and sort of looked over kids matches? I'm just eating chocolate,
Totally.
by the way.
No, you're good. Yeah, yeah, totally. We at every tournament we work, there's usually like a kids half day or something. So
Right.
those definitely you see the refs are intervening really quickly.
So I wanted to get your thoughts on like IBJJF kids rules, because I teach kids. In fact, I would say at this
Hmm.
point, like my primary role as an instructor is to focus on my kids program. And
Hmm.
th- as we know in IBJJF, certain submissions aren't allowed for kids. So like headlocks, guillotines, whereas other other promotions like Naga and ADCC, they just say fuck the kids. They allow them to crank their necks all they want. Um, Personally, for me, I think that guillotines and headlocks are a very important attack system in grappling for self-defense. I always tell the kids in the class, in not so many words, if someone ever tries to fuck with you on the playground, like headlocks will literally save you. Like if you know how to
Hmm.
put someone in a headlock and submit them from the front, the fight is over basically. That's why I think that's such an important system. But I also think it's not incredibly dangerous. Like I wanted to get your opinion on neck related injuries due to guillotines. I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm just saying I think it's pretty rare, and I'm not talking
Hmm.
about like a kid getting put in a headlock and then crying because they lost, because that happens like every tournament, most classes it happens. Kids cry when they lose, and they cry when they're overwhelmed with like difficult training. So, do you think that having headlocks banned for the younger athletes, do you think that that's like a just decision? Does it make sense to you from a medical perspective, or do you think that they should be able to go in there and just throw each other in guillotines?
I think the only thing that would make me say that it is could be something that is justified is if, let's say, a choke or a position is on for too long. Like kids are still developing, their brains are still developing, their structures are still developing. So that would be my only case of argument saying that if like it's done to an extreme and it's happening over time, then there, like, again, there's no evidence behind like maybe specifically in jiu-jitsu of what could happen if a kid has been put in these positions for too much too long. um, I would be curious to see the reason why IBJJF has that specific rule versus the other rule sets. I mean, that's the complicated part is in jiu-jitsu there's no set rule set that is like an umbrella over everything.
Like a
So you
unified
have,
rule set?
yeah, there's no unified rule set. There's everyone makes decisions based off of what they feel like is best, and it's kind of confusing sometimes. So I would be interested to see like what is their reasoning behind it.
Well, it's
I
it's
would,
it's safety. Like I've done the
yeah,
referees
safety.
course. I've asked them. It's safety, right? Same thing. Same reason why they can't touch the head when the trap
Mm,
triangle is on. Like they're not allowed to. And I believe that I don't know if it's a new rule, but it's a more revised rule. I've looked into it recently. I've emailed them and everything, and they don't really want to give me straight answers. But as far as I understand now, before the way I understood it was you can pull the head down in the closed guard. You can pull the head down all day long until there's a trap triangle. Once the trap triangle's on, you can no longer pull. You can't even touch the back of the head. Um, but before, what I thought it was you could pull the head down to set the triangle. Then you can't finish the triangle with the head pulling. But it's the first example. You're not allowed to pull the head down when there's a trap triangle. So they're just trying to like protect the spine essentially. But man, like I coach and referee kids tournaments all the time. Like we'll let kids put each other in fully locked rear naked chokes. And
mm-hmm.
there I'm looking at little Billy there. He's in a rear naked choke. He's like panic in his face. It's fully sunk in. And I'm just like I'm not gonna stop this. This is like this is kind of like a character building moment. Like either you get out or you tap out or you pass out. And I'm like, generally as a referee, we don't stop the match for like an RNC, but
Mm,
they will stop matches, and sometimes referees stop it way too fucking early when it's like an arm bar and the arm isn't even extended yet. Like and for kids, I always tell my kids, I've mentioned it on the podcast, I'm like, guys, I don't care like if you're not tapping, if your arm is fully extended, the referee will probably stop it. At least from an IBJJF standard. Like ADCC, it's kind of the Wild West. They let you put on a fully locked arm bar, and I actually feel like they're pretty decent about letting it go. But I actually I put kids in arm bars, and I'm like, okay, work your way out. And I can look at an extended arm and tell when there's wedges that will actually create like breaking pressure. But I've seen in
mm-hmm.
IBJJF tournaments, like the grip just breaks. And then as the arm is almost 180 degrees, they just stop it. And I'm like, well, that's to me kind of crazy. How do you feel about that rule? Like, do you think that they should let that play out a little bit more? Because as we all know, kids, even if there was an injury, which is really rare for kids, I would
Mm-hmm.
say, because they're so flexible. Like they heal so fast anyways. What do you think?
Hmm. I think with kids, there's also development when it comes to like their growth plates. So it depends on how old the kids are. They typically, because they're growing, their bones are not as structurally sound as adults, which obviously makes sense. So there is a, I don't want to use the word fragility, but because they are growing, the bones are not as strong. So if you put it in a position, put extra pressure on it, something like that, it could potentially cause them an
Ass-
injury. But
Assuming
again,
that the attacker has good braking mechanics, though, right?
exactly, totally,
A
totally.
lot
And
of
I
the
think
time, kids grab the arm and they just rip, but their legs are like completely open. There's no like real braking mechanics there.
right, right. I think if anything, the refs are just being overly cautious of just making sure the kids are. But I do also think there's a point where the kids do need to learn what is a difference between
Yeah.
uh like a fully locked in submission versus something that is not there yet. So until the kids can understand that, I think it like that's where you can be like, okay, now you can have that discussion of it makes more sense for them to really get closer to like an end range submission.
hmm I am a little bit of like an autistic psychopath though when it comes to kids. Like, like get in there and fucking fight. And it's like, actually, they're like 5, so maybe I
Yeah,
should,
I know.
maybe I should be like, oh, just try your best. Um, okay, cool. Talk to me about your physiotherapy practice, Open Mat Physio.
Yeah. So Open Mat Physio is so right now it's me and then one of our other physical therapists, his name is Chris. He is currently in a sports residency right now for physical therapy. So he's very much in the trenches of trying to get his sports certification, which is really cool. And but Open Mat Physio is basically an organization, a practice, a physical therapy practice where we serve the jiu-jitsu community. We try to educate the jiu-jitsu community in terms of teaching better advice or giving better tips on ways to come back from injuries, because what we know is a lot of times that we hear jiu-jitsu athletes will walk into like a doctor's office and say, hey, my shoulder hurts, I got caught in this funky position in jiu-jitsu, and it's a very high chance that the doctor has no idea what jiu-jitsu is to begin with.
Oh,
And
100%.
then the best advice that they usually give, or the one that's within their capacity of being able to give advice, is maybe you should find something else to do, which is a pretty
I hear that all the
dismissive
time.
type of yeah, it's a pretty dismissive piece of advice. And that I also do acknowledge that like the doctor themselves may be just trying to be overly cautious. They don't know how to
Yeah.
get you back to training, so that's the only advice that they'll say. Same thing with like people who lift weights. They'll go in and be like, oh, I went to do a shoulder press and then my shoulder starts to hurt, and the doctor says, well, maybe you should never shoulder press again. But
It's
in our
crazy
eyes,
that they
as
say that because I hear, like, not for me. I specifically have a physiotherapist that is aware of jujitsu, and he's very athletically involved, but he knows like what jujitsu is. He's worked with many grapplers, and like I think it's important for grapplers to seek somebody such as yourself who's familiar with the sport of grappling, because I hear so many of my students that see their physio just literally tells them don't do jujitsu anymore. Like that's like a
mhm,
common thing.
very, very common, and it's more of a lack of education and lack of understanding of what jujitsu is. Because something that we talk about a lot is jujitsu is not just a hobby. Like for a lot of people, it's not just, oh, I
Yeah.
go and then I work out and I go home. It's a place where people make friends. It's like their third space of comfort if they need to get away from stress, and it like becomes a bit of a lifestyle. Like we all know jujitsu is a bit of a lifestyle versus just an interest. So we always talk about how if jujitsu gets stripped from people's lives, then it's like we hear this all the time. Like we'll work with somebody and they'll be like, I've had pain for many months or many years, and I just haven't been able to get back to 100%. We work together for an X amount of time. We're able to get them back to training. They start to feel a little bit better. They start to feel a little bit happier. And then towards the end of us working together, they'll literally say, you know, when I first started working with you, I was going through a bout of depression. I was going like
Oh
through,
yeah.
yeah,
Like an
a really
injury
dark,
caused bout of depression.
exactly, like an
Yeah.
injury caused depression, or like I was in such a bad mental space, like when you I contacted you. And these are things that people don't talk about because they feel like this is, I can't talk to people about this, but it's the reality. And in order for us to be able to address that, we have to understand that, okay, if that happens, then try to find somebody that can understand you, because then you can get out of not just a mental like rut, but also the physical rut as quick as possible to get you back to training. So that's basically what we try to do, and at least be a resource, be something like an option that people can go to versus feeling like they have to default to the PT down the street that has no idea what jiu-jitsu is.
Right. Me and my buddies call that the dark place, because we've been doing
Mm-hmm.
jiu-jitsu for like 15 plus years now. And like, I've had my share of injuries and my students have had their share of injuries. And they're like, hey, Matt, I whatever, sprained my knee or whatever. I'm like, oh yeah, you're about to enter the dark place here. Like, here's some things that I can, here's some study resources, and try to stay involved in the sport. Don't just like be a stranger during these next couple months or whatever while you're healing. Like, and don't feel like we're all going to move ahead and you're going to, remain in the dust and we're all going to like get ahead of you. I mean, that can happen, but like, I've noticed through my bouts of injuries that are just inevitable in what we do, especially if you plan on doing the sport forever. Like, there's still ways you can improve even if you can't physically be on the mats. One thing Danner always talks about is like, watch your training partner's role and try to envision that you are one of the players, and try
Mm.
to think about like the decisions you would make if you were in their situation. And it's kind of like a fun little game you can play, and that actually is a really good way to make decisions. It's almost like you're playing chess, like with like two players in front of you. And I do that all the time when I'm hurt. And yeah, it sucks not being able to, get in there and roll. Obviously, there's like an itch that doesn't get to be scratched when you're in that role, but that doesn't mean you can't still improve certain things. And obviously, if you hurt your knee, it's like, well, you can still do your upper body work. You can still work the other leg. You can work your core. And so I feel like if we get injured, aside from maybe like breaking your neck or your back, there's generally always something that can be done for the practitioner. So obviously I want to discuss with you about like how you would approach a client who just got injured. But I think you answered one of the questions I had for you, which is, how does Open Mat Physio differ from other physiotherapists, other physiotherapy practices? And I think you answered that with, you're tailored for jujitsu or for grapplers. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we work only with jiu-jitsu athletes. We
Oh,
focus every
you won't work with
no,
other, really?
no.
Oh, very
Mm-hmm.
interesting. Wow. I was going to ask you, do you treat athletes from
No,
other sports? Wow.
no, we've gone 100% working with jiu-jitsu athletes.
Wow.
All of our seminars are geared towards jiu-jitsu athletes. All of our content is geared towards jiu-jitsu athletes. We don't work with any other athletes. And one of the reasons why we made that decision is because if my main focus is jiu-jitsu, then I can put all my learning into learning about the community, learning about every single person that comes and works with us. What is your experience like? Create a bit of a understanding that will make our services better. Because if I understand everyone's different when it comes to the getting back to training, I think that's like a big part of what makes us different too, is that we have a bit of an on-ramp of getting people back to training versus we've heard some of our clients who've gone to like a traditional PT and they'll say, oh, my PT cleared me. And then I'll say, okay, what did they clear you to do? And like, oh, just to go back to train. And then I was like, okay. And then there's like nothing else. There's like a huge gap because you
Yeah.
can't just be, okay, they clear me and then go back to training jiu-jitsu 100%. You're putting yourself in a place of risk of injury because there's no on-ramp. So we try our best to be able to communicate with our clients of, hey, I think you're ready to start to do some drilling with some of your trusted training partners. And then
Right.
as if they feel good, if they're feeling strong, then we'll continue to push a bit into some flow rolling. And then we'll push a bit into some maybe specific work. And then ultimately it's going to be rolling 100%. So that's like one of the processes we try to take all of our clients through. And one of the things we also say too is if I don't have to take you off the mats, I don't want to. And there's plenty of situations where I have people that come in and say, hey, like I have a funky little elbow situation going on and they're like a black belt. They've been training for a long time. but I still want to train. I was like, okay, cool. Let me just at least give you some guidelines, some rules of things that you should be mindful of. And I trust that you've been training for so long, you can control your body, you can manage your positions. And a lot of times that works really well because then we
Mhm.
don't have to 100% pull someone off the mats. We only do that if we absolutely need to. And most of the time, we're very transparent with our clients and say, hey, look, I promise you 3 weeks. Give me 3 weeks of off the mats, go to your classes, study some stuff, and then we will slowly ramp you back in. But if we do both of you training and you doing PT right now, we're almost taking one step forward, take 2 steps back, and taking one step forward, 2 steps back. And it's just not good for your long term progress. And
Right.
they're very understanding and they'll say, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Cool. In 3 weeks, we'll talk about getting back to training.
Mhm. LA is such a condensed area, and there is quite a bit of jujitsu going on there. It's pretty cool to see how a physiotherapy practice could function only by treating grapplers. So
Yeah.
if I come in and I'm like a hockey player and I'm like, but I really, really want your guys' professional opinion. Like I've heard you guys are amazing, and you're like, will you turn me away? Will you be like, well, do you do jujitsu? I'll be like, no. You'll be like, I'm sorry, we can't treat you.
So usually I have resources. I have other friends who are in like as PTs, and I've like
Mhm.
dedicated said, I'm going to focus solely on jujitsu. So I've had people that come to me and say, hey, I have a basketball player or like somebody that just does like Olympic weightlifting, and I recommended you to them. And I will tell them like respectfully, like I appreciate it. I understand that it's sometimes hard to find a PT that can really meet people's needs, but
Yeah.
um, at the same time, I've already committed to this side. So I will refer you to somebody that I also think is really good that can help provide that for you. So that's like my line, I guess.
Hmm. One thing I really like that you're saying, I'll say it again, is that you are interested in your athlete returning as much as possible. Like you don't want them to stop training. You want to get them back. And for people who are new to jujitsu injuries and you're looking for a physiotherapist, it's not like you need to go to any physiotherapist. Like you should almost shop around and see your physiotherapist background and type of athletes that they treat. Are they even into athletes or do they just like treat recreational people? But having one that is like invested in getting you back to the mats, I think is incredibly important just as like a recovery mindset, because if your PT is like trying to take away things from you,
Mm-hmm.
try to due to like liability or to just like, to play things on the safer side, it's like generally that's not how jiu-jitsu athletes think. We're kind of nutballs, right? We want to get back on the
Yeah.
mats and as quickly as we can. Like you said, it's more than just a hobby, right? And I think that it is important to find a professional like that. I wanted to ask you a similar question to before at the tournaments, but like, I'm curious, what's the most common injury that you will treat in your profession? Look at this fucking cat right now. And
Just
then she gets mad.
living her
Ooh.
best life,
Yeah.
doing
Then this
whatever she
got to come
wants.
out. Then I got to spray her. Okay. Sorry. She'll be
No,
back.
you're good. You're good. I know she's like, I'll come back later. So I think it depends. I'm starting to see a bit of a trend depending on the season. When it's like no-gi season, see a little bit more like knees, lower body, not just because of the leg locks, but also people are doing a lot more stand up.
Yeah. I would
So
imagine that's
they're,
where most of the injuries come from is probably wrestling, right?
yeah, stand up scrambles where they're trying to get out of a scramble, funky position, boom, pop my knee or something like that. When it's ski season, I see a lot of like necks, elbows of gripping, over gripping, or
Fingers.
um, yeah, fingers, but usually fingers are a little bit less common. I feel like it's more like wrist, elbow, and then necks. So necks are very, very common. People who have like zings that go down, what are they called in football? But they just like zing down your
Stingers.
arm of, yeah, stingers. Yep. Like pain down the arm, numbness, loss of range of motion in the neck, and then it becomes a bit of a conversation of, is it something like differentiating between your symptoms of knowing when it is something that is more of a red flag versus something that is more of a yellow flag that we can manage through conservative care. So that's our biggest job during when someone comes for a consultation is listening to their symptoms, looking at how their body moves, and then figuring out, is this something that is more severe than we thought and we need more further investigation, or you need to go get referred out to a different provider? Or I would say 95% of injuries in any type of sport, musculoskeletal, can be managed through conservative care, but that's like the first place we need to start. So I don't know if that answered your question. It's basically the whole body, you know?
Hmm. Do you treat fingers and toes, or do you send somebody to a specialist for that?
So usually when it comes to like hands and fingers, if it's a something where it's more severe, then a hand specialist will probably be better. But if it's like something where it's like my fingers are sore, or I injured it when I got caught on a gi or something, then we will rehab those. It's a bit of a less complex type of situation because it's more of healing. And then we have some exercises where one of my favorites is like a rice bucket. So you have
Yep.
them have a rice bucket, go in there, do a bunch of exercises, and typically that manages the fingers a little bit better. But yeah, we don't really see those as common. Although in a tournament, I did pop someone's toe back in, which was
Oh,
wild. Yeah, it was wild, but it was he's had multiple dislocations of that toe before.
yeah,
So it was like super weird. He was in guard. I think he was in like a lasso. His toe got caught in the gi,
yeah.
and then he tried to pull his foot out, and then it just popped out. And then he was like screaming and waving on the ground. I ran over there. I was like, "What is going on?" He like pointed down. I saw his toe was like perpendicular,
Yeah.
and he's like, "This happens all the time." And then I was like, "Okay," boom, popped it back in, and then he just kept going. I taped it up, and then he just kept going.
Yeah, like what I remember I broke my left big toe doing judo, and I was just basically we were doing like foot sweep drills, and I was so stupid. I just like stumbled on my toe and just completely broke it off to the side. Now I have to tape it.
Yo, man.
Like tape is so useful. I have to tape all of my hands and feet in some way, shape, or form just because of broken
Hmm.
fingers and toes. Um, I couldn't train without it. Like I always make the joke, I'm screwed if I'm in a street fight and I'm barefoot. Like I can't fight because I need to tape I need to
Where's
tape
my
my
tape?
toe.
Where's my tape?
Exactly. You want to go? Hold on a sec. Tape my toe and then pull guard and be like, okay,
Yeah,
I'm ready now.
that's
Um,
really funny.
that's funny. Okay, so what would you say is the hardest injury to treat? Like aside from like a paralyzing neck or back injury, like obviously that's like life changing, right? But like the
Hmm.
standard run of the mill injuries, shoulders, knees, hips, what do you think is the hardest to train from your perspective?
So
Hardest to recover, sorry.
yeah, I can think of two right now. One is if dislocation of the shoulder. I think that one is tricky just because it's a bit dependent on how long the shoulder has been out. And sometimes we'll get people who pop their shoulder out, they weren't able to relocate it. Let's say they were at training and then no one is skilled enough to do it. So a couple hours later, they're in the ER, and then the doctor has to give them like some type of anesthesia, local anesthesia to pop the shoulder back in. By that point, you have structures that were already affected. You have blood vessels that are affected. There's instability when it comes to the joint. So I wouldn't say like in terms of it's a hard, like a complicated process. It just takes a long time because now we have to think about their structural instability. So we can't rush into certain things in certain positions. We have to build a foundation where there's going to be a lot of the muscles are going to have to start learning how to be the main support factor for the shoulder. And then the shoulder is such a mobile joint. It's 360 degrees. You can move it just like the hip. So I will say that is probably one of the most frustrating injuries to rehab because it takes a long time. The other thing definitely is like post-op ACL is a very, very difficult injury to recover from just because post-op immediately, those first couple months are very brutal. You're coming out from like a being freshly cut open. You have to learn how to extend your knee. There's a lot of swelling. You have to learn how to rewalk again. So there's like a lot of mental battles that come with
Yes.
those type of injuries. And then after that, comes, the strengthening aspect. That whole process also takes minimum of a year. Some people re-injure themselves if they come back too early. So there's a lot of risk factors that come with ACLs that I think that's why it's such a big topic in the physical therapy world and why people are trying to study it as much as we can. And especially in jiu-jitsu, where again, heel hooks and leg entanglements, you put your knee in such funky positions, to be very, very mindful of that type of rehab and going fully throughout the entire process versus trying to cut it short. Those, I would say those two, and then maybe the Achilles, but I haven't seen as many Achilles injuries in jiu-jitsu as I've seen in other sports, like more
Mm-hmm.
jumping sports.
Will you treat grapplers from other grappling arts like judo fighters, wrestlers,
Yeah.
or is it,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
that makes sense. I mean, the
Yeah.
movements are similar, right?
Yeah.
Um, how important is an athlete's mindset when they face an injury?
I think it is a huge part of going through a recovery process, just because there's the whole side of understanding that things are going to take time. And we always say, like, it'll take as long as it takes. We can't rush the process. I wish I could rush it for you. I wish I could make it faster, but it's going to take as long as we have to, like, it's going to take, and we have to be able to endure that time frame, right? And then there's a second piece where, like you kind of mentioned, right, sometimes going to other PTs, they maybe if they don't work with jiu-jitsu athletes or athletes in general, they tend to have exercise programs that are a little bit more suboptimal. They're not really challenging you. They're too easy. So our philosophy is very much like, I'm going to push you to where your envelope is, but I'm not going to push you beyond your envelope. I have to make sure that I know where your line is. But the only way you're going to adapt is if we push you. So there's a mental aspect of that, of understanding that we're going to have to work really hard to get you back to where we need to get you. So to be able to be comfortable with discomfort, comfortable with understanding that sometimes we're going to have flare-ups. So mindset is so, so important. And I have this conversation with clients throughout our entire process. And that's why we communicate so often with them, because if they are having like a bad day or a freak out, I can go in there and I can start to like put out the fires, be like, for example, we had a client who a couple months ago during training, he popped his hamstring, and he was like a little bit older. He's like in his 50s, and he's like, I don't know, I want to compete next year. I'm not really sure how that's going to happen. He loves jujitsu. So we were doing our rehab in the beginning. It was very acute. So it happened a couple days prior to us doing the assessment. He wasn't able to do a lot, but we were able to at least get some exercise in. We were able to get some hip work, upper body, kind of like what you mentioned. I wanted to keep him as fit as possible. And then maybe a couple weeks later, he was doing some yard work, and then he took a funky step, and then he felt like another pop in his hamstring. So immediately, and I tell like our clients, if you have any emergencies, just text me. Immediately he texted me. He said, I'm going through like I literally popped my hamstring. I'm freaked out. Do I need to go to the doctor? Do I need, yeah, in the dark place. Exactly. And then I was like, give me 10 minutes. Let me jump on a call with you. So I jumped on the call, and he told me all of his fears within like that 10-minute, right, mark. And then I said, okay, let's have you do a couple things. Let's just make sure that your function is okay. I had him like do some squats, do some lunges while we were on the phone call. And he was like, you know what, it actually feels okay. And I said, okay, great. That's a really, really good sign. And then I told him like some things to look out for if there are red flags. And then you can just hear his voice start to get more calm. Yeah. And I said, this is just a flare up. And, it's been probably a couple weeks since that's happened. And he's like way back up there. Yeah. We're starting to do some jumping. We're starting to do some like more dynamic work. But if it wasn't for in that moment, that mindset of being able to endure like the dark places, it's going to be really hard for you to get to the other side, and just knowing that that's a part of the journey,
Did you know that when you were getting into physiotherapy and more specifically for grapplers, did you know that you would be also a counselor? It sounds like
You know,
because I experienced that as a martial arts gym owner. Guys will talk to me
of
about their
course.
marriages and their job and their kids and their things that are going on. Like you're signing up for more than just being helping someone recover injuries. There's a lot of mental stuff that goes on too.
Yeah, I think during our rotations, we were able, during in PT school, I was able to experience that a little bit, but it kind of worked in my favor because I do love psychology. I think it's very interesting how the human mind works. I think it's interesting how we work through discomfort and pain and obstacles. So when it comes to people telling me all these things, it's almost like a hat that like I actually do enjoy embracing
Yeah.
because it's a part of it too. And just knowing that there's so many parallels to jujitsu, to rehab, and then to life. So everything is like connected.
hmm Um, yeah, like let's say I called you up and I was like, hey, I think I just hurt my knee. It
Hmm.
could be a bad one. I can't straighten it. I can't put weight on it. Like let's assume it's like pretty bad, right? How would you get me started with a protocol? Like what would be your first couple of things that you'd look for that you'd advise me to do?
Yeah, so I think the first thing for sure is to talk about your symptoms a little bit more, see if there's any specific positions that aggravate you, any specific positions that you can tolerate, and then getting a little bit more medical history on your knee. Because that's going to give me a big chunk of the decision making when it comes to an acute injury of is this something that's reoccurred before? Do we have long-term chronic some, injury to certain parts of your body? And then from there, then I would prefer to do like an assessment right off the bat to see what is your range of motion, what are you able to handle, how are your hips, how's your core, like things like that. And let's say, for example, you can't even walk on that knee, then there's plenty of things that we can regress to where you're sitting on the ground, sitting in a chair, that we can start to at least get the knee moving. And so we will try to do our best to at least get the knee moving as much as possible. Kind of what you mentioned early on in the podcast, which is there's so many other things that you can train. Just because you injured that body part doesn't mean that you should just be sitting around doing nothing. So if it's a knee, then I would try to move the knee as much as possible and then train the hips, train the feet if you can, train the upper body. And then as time goes on, then one of my favorite things to get people doing is walking. I think walking is a very low level, gets the whole body moving, gets some blood circulation, in order for us to, like, motion is lotion. That's something that we always say. And then from there on, then we can start to get into some more complex stuff. But very beginning, I just want to see what you can do in terms of movement. And then that's going to be the prescription until you can start to do more.
In your best estimate, there's no real way to know this, but like out of the chunk of people that get injured in the jiu-jitsu community, how many, percent wise don't get treatment? Like, do you think a lot of people just ignore it? They don't
Yeah.
see a PT? Yeah.
For sure, for sure. I hear like I go to open mats and I go to seminars and I talk to people and a lot of times people don't if I go to a new place, some people won't know that I'm a PT, but at the same time I kind of mind my business. I'm not gonna like hear someone talk about their back and be like, oh well, I'm a PT, I can help you. It also depends on like my objective going there. If I'm like I'm there to train, I'm not trying to, do anything like unless they ask me, then I will be very upfront of telling them what to like some advice. But I will say, oh man, there are a lot of people that will be like, oh, I'm dealing with this thing, but they don't ever get it checked out. Because a couple weeks later, chances are it's going to feel better. And then they're just going to go back to training. So, what I've really noticed is a lot of jiu-jitsu athletes need to get pushed to the limit of, hey, I really can't train at all before they realize that they need to address it. And that by that point, it becomes a bit more of a complex case. But everything, in my opinion, is manageable. It's just a matter of setting expectations and letting people know it's going to take a little bit, but we're going to get you back to training. So I wish I could give you a percentage. I don't know. That's like
It's an estimate, right? You can't, there's no way
yeah,
to know.
70%.
Never get treatment, would you say? 70% never get treatment?
Maybe not never get treatment, but never get treatment that gets them back 100%. They're kind of
Yeah.
like, we'll go see a chiro, get some adjustments. We'll see a massage therapist, get a little bit of soft tissue work, maybe even go to like a cold plunge or something, but won't formally do a rehab program that can get them back to as close to 100% as possible. So I wish, but it is an investment as well. And it takes time, it takes energy, it takes a little bit more money. So I think it just depends on each person.
Is chiro bullshit?
I think it depends on who you see. There's a lot
So you
of
know some chiropractors that you don't want to offend. Is that why you gave me that answer?
I have a lot of really good friends who are chiropractors who are amazing. And this is what I will say. If a chiropractor is promising you that they're going to fix your injury through manipulations and that you have to come 2 to 3 times a week and you have to pay X amount of money and they're going to align your spine and they're going to break up scar tissues and things like that, there is plenty of evidence that shows that that's not true, because it takes so much more force than just the human hands to be able to move anything in our body. And I joke about this in like our seminars, like you have to get hit by a car. And that is like a lot of force in order for somebody to really shift your vertebrae or things like that. Mm-hmm. When chiropractors give adjustments, what it is based on the science, it is a release of gas bubbles that is in your joint. And that's typically what happens is your nervous system will become a little bit more, it's like goes into a bit less of fight or flight. There's like that relief side of your nervous system will be manipulated and then your body will feel a little bit better. So that's typically why people have more range of motion. They feel better afterwards. So I think it's the narrative that people put behind it. I know chiropractors who adjust and say, this isn't the end all be all. This is just for us to open a window of opportunity for you to move. And then their main treatment source is movement and strength training and stuff like that, which I'm 100% behind. It's just a narrative of like, I'm going to fix you. Yeah. You have to pay me $5,000 and you have to come here every single day for the next 2 years or something. Like, I think that is manipulative and like predatory, you know?
Mm-hmm. How do you keep athletes motivated on a protocol? So like, you know, you're working with an athlete, they have an injury that's potentially take like a year or even longer to fix. Like, how do you keep them motivated when they're in the dark place?
I think a big thing is making them, like helping them structure goals, small goals. So every single month, the way that we function is more on like a monthly basis versus like session by session. So every single month we try to set goals of like, hey, this month we're going to improve range of motion. We're going to decrease symptoms. These are going to be our main focus. So these are some things that are kind of boring in the beginning. But as we get a little bit further along, then we'll have, hey, our next month goal is going to be at the end of that month. I want to talk to you about getting back to training. I want to get you back to drilling. So giving them some tangible goals where they can see, okay, cool, I'm getting closer and closer to getting back to jiu-jitsu is a big part of it. I think the other thing is making sure that the athlete and I are like on the same page. So making sure that they know that my goal is to get them back to what they're doing and I have the best intentions for them and to be communicative throughout the whole process. Those two things and setting expectations very, very early on is very important. So I can't promise you that things are going to be the way that it is in the future. Like I don't have a crystal ball and I can't predict the future. But I can say that throughout the entire process, I'm going to be here for you in whatever capacity that we need. And so I think when someone realizes like, okay, I have someone that's like a teammate versus like, a healthcare provider that might not be there sometimes, like I can like stand next to them while they move along the journey. So I think those are probably the biggest things. And then, you know, if we talk about programming and all, it's more of just making sure that they are happy with what we're doing. I have my goals of what we want to work on and then also taking their suggestions into mind as well.
Have you ever had clients that you just couldn't help return to the mats?
Definitely. Yeah. And
you feel like you fail when you do that? When you
know, there definitely isn't a responsibility that I will take in certain points, because what I will say is maybe I didn't do as good of a job when it comes to showing them that I am on their side, or maybe I didn't do a good job of connecting the dots of showing them why this is actually important. And some people have, will do programs for a couple months and they'll be like, you know what, I don't think this is a good fit for me. And I'll be like, okay, like I can't force you to continue to do this and I wish the best for you, but I'll definitely reflect and say, what are some things that I could have done better? Um, and then there's a part of me that also acknowledges that everybody is going through their own thing. And all I can do is try my best to provide as much support as I can, but I can't do the work for you. I can't change certain things. And if there's a problem when it comes to consistency or when it comes to staying accountable with the program, then that's something that I can't control. So I definitely will reflect a lot on certain clients that I wasn't able to get back to training. And I will, you know, I've gotten better as I gotten older, but asking for feedback of like, what happened? How can I be better? And most of the time they're very understanding and they're like, will give me honest feedback. And then that's what we try to use to be better for like future clients.
Mm-hmm. How do you feel about knees over toes guy? Sure, you
Knees
get
over
asked
toes
this
guy.
all the time.
Yeah, there's a lot of our clients that come in and after like knee injuries and you'll see people that say, "Oh yeah, help me," and some people say it made my knees worse. So I think the big principle that we need to talk about in terms of knees over toes is that it's not a one size fits all for people.
Even
And
though
I
it
think
is
that
marketed that way, I would say.
right, exactly. And I think that's just takes away from the reality of working with individual people with different backgrounds, with different medical histories, with different um, like ways of mindsets and stuff. Like just because you have knee pain doesn't mean they can just funnel you into one specific thing and say this is going to solve your issues. There's a lot of complexity that comes with knee rehab that is missed. But I will say I think knees over toes does serve a purpose in a large scale, but there's so many specificities that they won't be able to manage because injury is so individual and it is so different. And we will get people where they say, I did the protocol, it didn't really help me, it didn't really do anything. And then that's when we have to turn the corner and say, okay, well, what's actually going on? So, I mean, I don't think their intention is bad. I think sometimes the narrative might be a little extreme for clickbait, for views and the algorithm and stuff like that. But I think the intention behind the program, it's helping people, but I don't know to what degree.
He's probably like, hey, those jujitsu guys that need jujitsu and feel hopeless with their, lack of meniscuses. I can just tell them if they do this, they'll be able to dunk and they'll be able to jump. And it's just
Yeah.
like tapping into a market where like people need hope basically. Cause a lot of these knee injuries, especially like meniscus issues, like I've had meniscus issues. It's, you are in a place where it's like based on what regular doctors tell you, there's not a lot of like hope. It's kind of like, okay, we can go in there and we can trim it, or you can just like cope with it and do physio.
Yeah.
And when you do trim your meniscus, it's like tearing pages out of a book, right? It's not like you can
Hmm.
just regrow meniscus, or it's
Yeah.
not easy to do that. Even though I feel like most meniscus cases are you can cope quite a bit, but your knee will never really be the same from my experience.
That's my problem when it comes to the narrative of almost preying on people who are a bit hopeless, of
Hmm.
saying, look, this is what you need. If you don't do this, your knee's going to explode. And when people are really scared and fearful, like that's where a lot of marketers and salesmen like to jump in. But I just don't find it very ethical. And for the sake of money, like, is it really worth it? Like, I don't think so. I think it's better to come from with a message that is hopeful and say, hey, just because you have a knee injury, like I want you to see what the reality is and see that you can come back. It just takes some work. And if you're willing to put in the work and willing to find some guidance, then like I will tell you, you'll be able to get back to training. Like I've seen all different body parts, and for people who have done the work, who have actually committed to the process, like there hasn't been one person that hasn't been able to get back to training. They've all gone back to training.
Hmm. At what point would you have somebody that has a meniscus issue and you would recommend surgery?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think when it comes to if their knees like locking up all the time, like if
Yeah.
it's like they take a step, bend their knee, and then it locks up, and it takes a while for them to unlock it, then there might be something that's more structural that's in there that is causing them to not be able to have full function of their knee. So if that's something that's been reoccurring, then I will recommend an MRI and then see what the doctor says and then go from there. But most of the time, if that's not happening, if everything else is mostly clear, then I will say conservative care is probably the best decision, and we just have to make sure that we're monitoring some of the other symptoms. And then if something pops up, then I have no problem with saying, hey, let's get some imaging. Let's see what it looks like.
What's the one or two main prehab exercises you'd recommend for people to keep their knees safe?
I think I'll always say that the best exercises that you can do, or the best thing that you can do in general, is have a strength training program. So making sure that you're doing your squats, your lunges, your deadlifts. These are the main three big movements, pushing and pulling with your legs, that'll keep your muscles, and it's compound. So it's hitting all different muscle groups at the same time. I think there isn't specifically best exercises or best prehab things, but I would say consistency when it comes to a strength training program and making sure that your recovery off the mats is good. Those are the two things, is making sure that you're sleeping well, you are taking care of your body, you are being smart about choosing training partners. Like that is, in my opinion, probably one of the best pieces of advice to give to people to mitigate injuries, because I've been in that situation too. It's just choosing people that you trust, choosing people that'll give you a good role, but not choosing people that you know may be dangerous to you and cause a threat. Like these are things that we can control, and that's all you can do when you're training, right?
Very good advice. Okay, before we get out of here, before we wrap, I just had a question for you. We did see, I think it was announced yesterday or the day before, Polaris is having Helena versus Ffion Davies. It's probably the biggest ladies jiu-jitsu match ever. Um,
Wild.
yeah, it's pretty. Fuck off, goddamn cat scratching me and just like now's not the time. What do you think of that match? Who wins?
Oh man. So I think I just actually one of my friends asked me this question this morning. And my take is I think Ffion just has so much more experience. And I think that may be the edge. Although Krivar is like, she's like obviously the next superstar.
And
I
she's
just
also
don't
super
know.
experienced, even though she's
Yeah,
like really
yeah,
young.
she's super experienced. But I just think that Ffion being a little bit older might and a little bit more, I don't know, seasoned, I guess. For some reason I lean towards Ffion. What about you?
Yeah. Um. Yeah, I could see Ffion being. She's just got such high level jujitsu that I feel like she can probably neutralize a lot of Helena's game. Like Helena's game is primarily leg attacks that
Mm-hmm.
leads to the back and leads to sweeps or like closed guard, and I don't know if she's going to have an effective closed guard against Ffion. I think that's going to be tough. I don't think she can take down Ffion, so she's going to be mostly
Yeah, for
pulling
sure.
guard and playing
For sure.
playing on the bottom. So yeah, it's an interesting discussion for sure. I think I got to give the edge to Ffion, and I'm pretty sure Ffion will be the she'll probably be the favorite going into that fight. But I would love to see Krivar win because she's just so young and like so good. We don't see her lose very often. Same with Ffion.
Yeah.
So for me, I think I got to give it to Davies on this one.
I think Fion's injured right now, right? Like she's like going through something. Cause
I have
she,
no I have no idea. The match isn't till June 28th, so it's still
cause
quite a ways away.
I think she was supposed to fight Adele
Yes, I believe you're right.
this weekend, I think. So I think she might have had to pull out of the card. I think I saw something about her getting injured, but yeah, that'll
Yeah,
be
you might
exciting
be
because she
right.
has a couple months of rehab, and then she'll come back and it'll be a really fun match.
Yeah, I mean, even you throw like Adele against Helena, there would be quite a bit of a size advantage there.
No, for sure.
Helena's big. I've seen
She
her in
is.
person multiple times, very wide in the chest and like big torso. She's somewhat tall, I'd say, for a lady, and she's just fucking very broad across the shoulders. So,
Hmm.
but I mean, Adele's the champ, right? Like that's that match interests me quite a bit. I think it's a matter of time before we see it. But yeah, it should be a good match, anyways. I think that's a really cool match to watch. Before we get
Yeah,
out of
should be
here,
fun.
Diana, is there anything you want to add?
No, just basically if you guys need anything from us at Open Mat Physio, you can find us on all website, Instagram at Open Mat Physio. Our DMs are always open. That's like one of the things we try to like keep open is just if you need any question or have any questions, need anything from us, we want to be a resource to just community. So shoot us a message, let us know if you have any questions, and we'd love to support you.
And you had mentioned that you have a podcast as well, right?
Oh yeah, we do have a podcast. We barely talk about it, but every Friday we have an episode. It's called Open Mat Social Hour, and you can find it on Spotify, Apple Music, and all that. But what we do is we try to talk about little topics that we hear throughout the community, as well as interview jiu-jitsu athletes who have gone through rehab, who have their own stories of overcoming certain injuries. And we just feel like there's a lot of podcasts that interview the competitors and high level athletes, but I think there's a very big value in like the everyday person story.
I think for people who are going through injuries, especially like for me, I've been through so many injuries that I'm as soon as I get injured, I'm like, I kind of skip a few phases because I know what's in store. Whereas
Totally.
people who've never had injuries before, they're like, shit, what does this mean? Like, this is like my first rodeo. Like, am I never gonna get back? Like, am I gonna suck when I get back? Blah blah blah. Like, and when it happens to me, I'm like, oh, okay, now I'm injured. I guess I'm on the shelf. So my mindset immediately shifts more to coaching and studying and like rehabilitation exercises. But I think that a podcast that talks to people who have been through those situations and can offer their stories and uh by way of those stories, their support to listeners who've never been in those situations, I think that would be incredibly helpful. So that's really cool. I'm definitely going to check that out. Um, anyways, that's all I got. Yeah, Diana, Wang, thank you so much for joining us and talking to us about physiotherapy. Really appreciate the conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate you as well.
Great, guys. Check out the links in the bottom if you want to support the show. Everyday Jiu Jitsu podcast is everything you need to know about Jiu Jitsu. Take care.